Hi guys, Paul from Locksmith City, in for another video. I believe this is video 7 now, I think. If not, I'll delete this out and you won't even know this bit exists. Okay, so the last video I spoke a bit about sort of some of the important things to try and get right when you start your business. I'm not saying you have to follow them, you know, because as I say, I'm not a business guru. I'm just giving you tips and ideas of what I found works for me and the mindset that I use in order, you know, to get my business up and running and continue the way it does. So the types of work that I typically do now from a day-to-day point of view is I don't really do any out-of-hours stuff. It's got too competitive, you know, so anyone coming in to the game, or anyone who's in the game who's looking to get extra work, who's been used to doing everything during the day, the call-out stuff, out-of-hours, it's a tough game to crack. The reason being the way that now Google operates and the algorithms that they use and the sponsored ads. You know, initially when I first set up, Google would only have typically 1 or 2 sponsored ads on a page. Now you look up in the area that I live, some days you can have 4 or 5 on there. You can have the map listings, so you end up with people again who are national companies who set up fictitious addresses or use, you know, someone else's address as a means, as a base. You know, they're not local at all, but people believe they are, because obviously customers are, you know, none the wiser to question as to why, you know, why would these people make up an address? They don't understand that, which is, you know, it is what it is. You can't really do much about it. You can report it to Google, but it's such a big company that to try and report one person out of God knows how many millions on there, you know, you got a small chance of getting through. But if you're persistent, eventually it gets resolved. So, you know, so the out of hours stuff sort of dried up a good few years ago, and the other thing, these other companies, they're coming in there, they think they're being clever by, you know, undercutting everyone. You know, and whilst it's better to sort of believe that, you know, if you do everything cheap, you know, you're going to get all the work because you're undercutting everyone, and to an extent that's true. But what will come with that is you'll get so much work that you won't be able to fulfill it, and you're going to need someone to cover that work for you. So then what you'll find is you get these call centres then call you, offering you the work in your area because they've done a search in your area, seen that you're a couple underneath them, and then they want to pass you the work. So I will never agree to take on this work. You know, you created this monster, so therefore you're going to have to live by what you've created, you know. And if that's a case of you chose to undercut everyone, I'm not going to want to go out and work for your fees. So, you know, it's created a massive hole. And the same again with you know, they advertise from £39, and people just see the £39. They don't see from, you know, because that normally typically is quite small, and they'll say, well, I've just had a quote. They might not have run the company, but so I've had a quote for £39, £49, whatever, and you try and say, well, you know, I can't compete with that. I refuse to compete for that. If you want a professional person to come out and, you know, open your door, then you have to pay a professional price. You know, if you want to pay someone £39 and run that risk, you know, that's solely down to you. So, you know, you roll with it if you wish to. So, and I don't really want to compete with the out of hours stuff, you know, because the way I see it is these people will flood the areas with this fake advertising. The novelty will wear off for them because they're constantly being called out. They're constantly not got the people to cover the work, and then over a period of time they will just disappear, you know. And that seems to be the pattern. You know, all of a sudden you're getting uplifting work because people are calling you, you know, and then all of a sudden it'll cut off again because, you know, someone else has come into the area to try it. So I wouldn't get reliant on out of hours type work. You know, there's a fair bit of it out there, but it's so competitive, and in the long run it's going to cost you money to try and get that work. So I tried to diversify and go off into my own sort of niche, which when I first set up, I was doing the repossessions, you know, and in all fairness, I'm not a massive fan of repossessions. You know, one, because they can get volatile. Two, you could be repossessing someone's house who you don't know. They don't know you, and you know, from that it can cause a whole host of other problems. You know, someone's home is important to them, and they don't want someone invading their space. You know, and you never know if they're going to take that to the extreme. You know, they could have knives, anything. So I've never really been a massive fan of the eviction, but it was a means to pay your bills, and you know, that's why I did it. And it did give me a good, as I said previously, it did give me a good start into the game, and I owe a lot to it. You know, and some of the cases are pretty sad, where you could go to a property, you know, to repossess it. You get there, the tenant is unaware. You know, the tenant is renting the place. They've been paying their rent to the landlord or to a rogue estate agency or whoever it may be, but that doesn't mean that that person is then paying that to the mortgage company or the person who's giving them the loan for the property. So, you know, when the tenants are getting a letter through the post saying, oh, you know, to all occupiers, or to the name of the person, the landlord, and all occupiers, you know, a lot of the time these people won't open the letters, so come the repossession date, they're totally unaware that anyone's coming to repossess the property. So, you know, and these people might have handed over, you know, 2-3 months worth of rent, deposit, moved in, and then within, you know, in under a year, a few months could be being repossessed, and you know, they don't know. So I never intended to stay into repossessions for the long game, and thankfully I've managed to sort of get out of the repossessions and stay out. Sorry, this road's a little bit lumpy and bumpy down here. So what I then started to look at doing was the forfeiture of leases, which, to be honest, I could have done them all day, well I say all day, all night, every night, because the roads were much clearer. You very rarely went to a property and had any trouble. You know, you would gain entry peacefully. It's just you and the bailiff, maybe, you know, the landlord sometimes, and you're there. You can gain entry, you know, most of the time, because I wasn't doing destructive entry, it was silent, so no one was aware, until, you know, the odd unit would have an alarm which could cause us a bit of problems, but you had next to no issues there, you know, and you could arrive at a job and be out the door again within 15-20 minutes on your way back home, and near enough charge the same sort of money for doing a couple of jobs that you had done during the day. So it was perfect, you know. And some weeks I'd be doing 4 or 5 of these jobs, and you didn't really, if you didn't want to, have to work for the rest of the month, because not the rest of the month, but the rest of the week, because, you know, you was charging that bit extra. But one, because it's out of hours, unsociable hours, you know, so it wasn't very competitive, because not a lot of other people wanted the responsibility of doing this, and they weren't able to open the locks. And, you know, you tend to come up against aluminium doors, steel doors, glass doors, and these people are not interested in that. They want a job where they can go to a UPVC door or a wooden door, undo a few screws, swap a lock out, walk away, and charge, you know, as much as they can for that privilege. So forfeiture of leases wasn't for everyone, so that kind of become my niche. And I worked for a few various different companies, and as I explained in the last video, the video before that, in video 5 I think it was, that, you know, the bailiffs in the long run all become a bit of a a bit of a pain to get paid by. You know, I'm not saying all bailiffs are like that. It's just the ones that I've come, whether it's like down a London thing, whatever. I don't know, but you know, you always sort of seem to get to a point, a few months down the line, a year down the line, where money isn't being paid as readily as it should be. But you're expected to turn up on time and have the right tools and materials to do it. You know. So I did the forfeitures predominantly for, I don't know, probably 3 years. After doing evictions, probably for 2 years. So that takes you into sort of 5 years. But more recent times, I've tended to go down the route of working for a local housing association, and I got into them. It's quite a funny story, really, because I never had any intentions of doing it, and a lot of people say, oh, why do you work for a housing association? You know, you don't get recognised and paid the right sort of money for doing it. You're just undermining and no. So, you know, it's great to say, oh, you know, someone has to do it. That's very true, but it's all in my local area. It's all within 2-3 miles of where I live. I'm not having to necessarily go out of London, you know, or the near area into the traffic like I used to, you know. But what got me started in with them was that I was at a job in Blackheath, which isn't very local to here, and what happened was that whilst I was doing this job, this other guy came up to me who was in this white van and had the company name on the vehicle, and he just said, oh, are you here for such and such a property? And I was like, no, I'm not, I'm for this one. He was, oh right, okay. He said, oh, it's just that I need a locksmith, and I've been having trouble with this property. We've got no keys to get in. So I said, well, sorry about that. I mean, you know, I'm happy to do the job for you, but you know, are you going to pay me to do it? And he said, well, no, but I can speak with my office, see if they'd be happy to pay you to do it. Anyway, it turns out that they had a door, their own doors that they had made in house. That had some locks fitted on them, 2 mortise locks, right hand throw, almost like a Cytec setup. They used to put them on void properties to stop people breaking in. And what the problem was is the guy didn't have the right keys to the property, and they didn't know what keys it was. He was under the impression the keys he had was the right ones. And anyway, long story short, they asked me if I could gain entry into this property, but they said, could you use as minimal damage as possible, and they'd have to send the doors in to be repaired. And I said to the guy, well, you know, you're not really going to have any damage. And he said, well, how else are you going to open these doors? Well, I can look at picking or, you know, decoding it. And he said, no, these are security locks, you know. So I said, okay. So I gave them the price for opening the door, and they were a bit hesitant at first, but they kind of sort of said, well, we've got no option, we want it done. So anyway, having checked what locks were fitted to the door, they were secure fast. For those of you who know your locks and everything, there were 2 black secure fast, and I wasn't sure myself whether they were keyed or not, but when I asked the guy, I said, does one key open both? He said, yeah, I'm sure it does, but I can't be 100% sure. They typically do. So I went with his assumption that it was. So the easiest lock to work on was the bottom lock. So I got my secure fast decoder out, did a decode, and this guy was watching me. He was like, so what's this going to do? Are you just making a key? And I said, well, essentially yes. And he said, so how are you doing it? Is it, you know, I thought you had to drill these locks. I said, well, no, you know, that's the misconception. But anyway, I just needed to get on. So I don't mean to be rude, but I need to concentrate and make sure I'm going to do a correct read. Anyway, he's just, to be fair, he just sat there and just watched me do it. And I built this key up from the decode that I'd taken, and I put the key into the lock, and I turned it, and I said to him, right, this is this one open. And if you could have seen his face, it was like he'd seen a ghost. He could not believe that I just opened this lock. and there was no drill in sight or nothing. And he said, so what about the top one? I said, well, if you're saying it's the same one, hopefully this key will work in there. Put the key in on the top lock, turned it, and it opened. Perfect. And this guy was really impressed, you know. He could not believe it. So he said to me, like, what, can you change the locks? I said, well, are you worried if anyone got the keys that shouldn't have? And he said, well, no, they must be in the office somewhere, but we don't know which ones they are. He said they've been tagged up wrong, I'm guessing. He said, but I don't really have any fears of anyone having a key. So I said, would you be happy if I cut you a new key and just leave the locks as they are? He said, well, how are you going to do that? I've got key cutting facilities on the van. I can take you the key that I've just made and cut that onto a key blank. And again, he didn't quite believe what I was saying. So he came to the back of the van and he watched me pick the key blank, put the decoder into the jaws of the, well, I built the key up so it was symmetrical, put it in the key cutting machine, and I cut him 2 keys. And when he took them keys off me, I said to him, I'll go and test them in the door. And he still took them to the door, hesitant that they weren't going to work. And obviously he turned them and they was like as if there was a genuine key. And he just over and over just kept saying, I just can't believe you've just done that. I can't believe you just opened that door. I've never seen anything like it. He said, I was expecting holes and banging and crashing, you to be here for a couple of hours to get this door open. He said, he said, would you be interested in doing any other work for us? You know, because we get stuff like this all of the time. And of course, you know, I'm never going to turn down additional work. So I said to the guy, yeah, that's not a problem. So while I was there, he rang a guy who at the time was like, I'm guessing like their office manager or who dealt with the voids and everything else. And he just said, look, I'm here with this guy who offered to open the door for us. He's opened this door with no damage. He's given me working keys. It's the same locks. And, you know, this guy on the other end of the phone obviously was, you know, couldn't get his head around it. So they actually called me in for a meeting. And I met this guy and I sat down with him and I spoke with him. And, you know, they were talking to me as, they were so intrigued with, you know, how did I do it? It wasn't really like a meeting. It was just more of a discussion of what I'd done and, you know, what my capabilities were. And I said to him, well, you know, I tend to specialise more in the opening of non-destructive stuff, and I do a lot of UPVC repairs and, you know, replacing mechanisms. And from that point onwards, they basically said, you know, we're looking for someone, you know, the guys that we've got on the road. He said, like, obviously they, you know, it's not their fault. They're just chucked out into the deep end. You know, they're just sent to go and open the door. They, you know, they're not trained locksmiths, but we do have a lot of damage. And we've just had literally new composite doors fitted throughout these different various estates. And they've all got composite doors with multi-point locking systems and PAS 24 handles. Some of them don't have PAS 24, but they still have like a 1-star cylinder. He said, like, we're struggling with a lot of damage and, you know, time as well of people getting in. So he said, like, is it something that you would contemplate taking on some of these jobs? And I said, yeah, no problem at all. So with that said, I kind of filled in all the paperwork, signed up to everything, and I've kind of worked for them now for the last, probably coming up to 3 years. And people are right, the money isn't as great as if I was going out advertising, but the array of jobs that I get, again, you know, is pretty good. I can be doing anything from evictions for them, but thankfully the evictions for these are not anything like your normal domestic evictions. You know, there's very little to no confrontation. These people are aware of what's going on, and obviously the housing officer has been in touch with them and dealing with them, so there tends to be no problems. I mean, I don't do a huge amount, but I do get some. And then it's just led on, snowballed with them. You know, I went from doing the voids to then doing like some of the evictions. I didn't do all of them, but some of the evictions. And then they do the gas safety, which effectively is in the tenant's contract. If they have to allow the gas safety check to be done every year. But in their contract it states that, you know, if they don't arrange a date and it gets to the time where it's about to expire, the certificate that the housing association can gain entry into their property with a gas engineer and a locksmith to gain entry and to, you know, carry out the gas safety. You're not changing the locks to lock them out or anything like that. You're just literally letting the gas guy in to just make sure that their gas is safe. You know, so I started doing that for them, you know, and we was going around to all of these doors, and I was opening them all, and so he was meeting the wardens. So they have a few guys that drive around the area who, you know, supervise on different things, who are knowledgeable in the area, and they would essentially meet you there. I mean, almost like a security, but, you know, a much nicer group of blokes, and you'd meet them all there, and you gain entry, and then they'd film going in if no one was answering. I started doing that, and then they started to ask me if I would do some of the garages. So when garages were being repossessed, or, you know, the tenants being evicted because they hadn't been paying the rent on the garages, you know, I then got involved in that. So now I was doing the voids, I was doing the gas, I was doing evictions. Now they want me to do the garages. So you had 4 different avenues of work coming in, you know, and it started to consume your day. And then I started to get stuff for you know, like the day-to-day stuff, like people not being able to lock the back doors, trouble with the front doors, handles coming off, you know, the general lock wear and tear, as well as, you know, emergency stuff. So now my daily stuff with this company is going out and doing the remedial stuff, you know. Like today I've probably done about 6 jobs so far. The first one this morning was ease and adjust the door. The top roller was just, when the door was closing, it was just hitting on the frame. If you pulled the door hard enough, it would close, but it just needed a bit of adjustment so that the door didn't bang. But, you know, the height for the door was fine. I didn't have to adjust the height of the door, just literally adjust the top hinge and a slight adjustment on the middle one to pull the door in towards the closing edge of the frame, which then allowed the door to close properly. Another one that I've done today would be, what was the other one I did? Oh, a set of handles. The internal handle would come off, past 24, and what they've got is they've got like a split spindle. So the 2 parts of the spindle have got a pin which works on like a socket. So the two spindles are joined, and there's a pin and a hole in the other one which passes through, and then you have like a pin that passes through, like a knurled, what's the best way? At the end of the spindle that passes into the spindle that's got the hole in it, there's like a wheel essentially at the end. So a split pin goes in front and stops in front of that wheel, and then that stops the 2 parts from pulling apart, but it still allows them to rotate against each other. And basically it's quite a common problem I come against. The pin somehow it's just been pushed in, but over a period of time where everything's been moved and the expansion and contraction, this pin works its way out until the 2 parts separate. So when they pull the door shut, the handle just comes off completely. So I dealt with that today. I dealt with a mechanism on the back door, because the tenants have been forcing the door shut. You know, they've been doing it constantly. They said it's been like it for weeks or months. That the actual gearbox failed, so the only option then is to put a new one in. So we've done that. Another one, we just changed the Euro cylinder. And the last one that I've just done, I've just driven away from, was the bottom hook on a KFV mechanism was faulty. It looks like it's been faulty for a while, and it's just come disconnected from the mechanism, but it's all, the mechanism's seen better days, a bit crunchy and everything else like that. So I've made sure that the bottom hook can't lock and knock them out, so I just disengage that for the time being, and then I'll order a new mechanism, and then I'll go and install that when I receive it. So that's the sort of variation that I've had today. That's how I got in with this housing association, and all fairness, you know, yeah, I could earn more money going out you know, chasing it, but I don't have to chase this. You know, I've made a bit of a name in there that the go-to person, you know, if they do send someone out to do their out of hours, that, you know, if they change the mechanism or something like that, that they can give me a call and I will go and source a new mechanism, repair it. You know, they know that I can do key cutting, they know that I can do non-destructive entry, which has led on to some other jobs where from time to time the housing association is contacted by the police where they believe that a tenant or someone has illegal activity going on, whatever that may be, and I'll be called in to open that door, because the police will go there with their enforcer. They're not trained locksmiths. You know, yeah, they get a bit of stick, but you know, they're not trained to pick the locks or anything. Their thing is to get the door open as quick as possible. So because these new composite doors that are being fitted, they were causing more damage. You know, they were getting the doors open, but it was just the damage and the aftermath after. So that's where I sort of came in. So recently I've probably done about 3 or 4 over the last year. So it's not like it's all the time, but I'm just contacted. I'll go there and I'll just literally open the door for them, and then they'll go in and do what they have to do. I don't go into the property. I'll just literally open the door and then I'll leave site. So yeah, so it's not always a bad thing to work for, you know, housing associations, or you know, some companies will be like a facilities management company, and yeah, you're not going to be able to charge the prices that you would on a day-to-day job. Yeah, if someone was to call me up now, say they're locked out, the price that I would charge for that is nowhere near the price that I would get if I was doing it for a housing association. However, how much does that cost me to get that private call? You know, am I guaranteed that work? Is it something I'm going to get every day? Am I going to have competitors? So far with this housing association, I've got no competitors really, you know, because they don't need anyone else. All they want is someone reliable that they know that can, you know, who's got the experience and knowledge to rectify the issue that's the problem. That's it. So I'll do that. I'll still get my day-to-day calls, you know. It might not be that I get many because I don't push myself out there for them, but at the same time I get the calls. I get companies call me for jobs, you know. Just last week, on Friday, I had to go to Mayfair uptown, which is more into central London. Not really an area I like to go into, but they found my number and they wanted a digilock fitted on their office, you know. It's one of them things. My work can sort of literally, people just find my name here, there, ever. Whether it's someone's handed them a business card, or someone I've done a job for previously has given my number, whether they found me on the internet or what. Half the time you never really know, but I can get jobs literally all over the place, and I don't really pay. Well, I don't pay. The only thing I pay for is a website, and that costs me £15 for hosting a year. The website itself doesn't really cost me anything because I just manage it. I use Checker Trade, which is a monthly fee. Well, it's a yearly fee, but you can do it monthly. I pay for mine yearly. But that's more of a way to get work through people looking on there who want, you know, someone who's can be looked at and seen. You basically get a score. If the customer leaves a review, they'll score you out of 10. That's really my only level of form of advertising. Everything else is just literally word of mouth. So you can make a business out of just word of mouth. You know, you don't have to sit there and rely on spending £200, £300, £400, £500 a week or a few grand a month, you know, relying on sponsored ads or a company who keeps promising to get you onto first page of Google. You know, if you work hard, you work smart, and you know, you'll find a way in. You'll find a niche of work, you know. And that's the other thing, is just specialising, diverse, you know, learn new skills. If you're just going to go out and do lock changes all day, every day, and you're just going to rely on that, you know, anyone can swap and change locks. I'm not saying they're necessarily going to do it the right way, or they're going to charge the right price, or that they're going to use the right materials, but it's a lot easier for anyone to just sort of think, well, it's just undo a couple of screws, you know, or chisel out a bit of timber here. You know, the skill set there isn't as great as it is just opening that door without any damage. You know, it's nowhere near. So just find a bit of a niche in your area. You know, if you're lucky enough to not have many locksmiths in your area, you're going to get the work, no problem. But in London, obviously, it's quite saturated. You've got all these, you know, you're getting emergency companies like emergency locksmiths, emergency plumbers, and emergency electricians that have all started to diverse a little bit into the lock world, you know, because locksmithing isn't governed as such. You know, although I'm a member of the MLA and they're like a go-to recognised governing type body, you don't have to actually be a registered locksmith, you know. So there's no real registration as such to sort of say, well, I'm certificated to carry out this work. Whereas to work on electrics, you know, to sign it all off and, you know, to work on some forms of electric and fuse boards, you have to be certificated. You have to have regular exams and tests to ensure that you're up to scratch and competent enough to do that. The same with gas, you know, you can't work on gas unless you're gas safe. But for locksmithing, there isn't really that safety net. So anyone essentially can set up as a locksmith, and it's quite dangerous, you know. And personally, I'd like to see it licensed, and that's not because of, you know, it'll give me more work necessarily. Yeah, you know, as much as I'd love new work, it's the problem with licensing is it could cause a few headaches, but at the same time, in the long run, it'd be for the better, because, you know, anyone who's coming to your house to work on your security has, one, at least got a DBS, so they've been checked their history, you know, that they're not a previous burglar or fraudster or something like that. You know, people can change their lives around, you know, and people, you know, I'm not saying if you were 15, 16 and you did something stupid that you should then be penalised for that when you get older. That's not what I'm saying. But if they're a prolific, you know, for shoplifting and stuff like that, you know that there's an air of dishonesty about that person. And that's not really the sort of person you want working in your house. So I would like to see locksmithing governed. But again, that's for something else later on down the line. So that's just something for you to consider, guys. Again, I'm just going to, as I say, I'm just going to keep looking at random stuff. I mean, the videos are getting to like 30 minutes each video, and I'm not sure if that's too long for people, or if you'd prefer videos at 10, 15 minutes or even less. But if you make comments in the description box below, you know, tell me whether you prefer shorter videos, longer videos, in-depth videos, or just, you know, skimming stuff. I'll be appreciative of that. So if you can subscribe, like and share, that would be great. Hit the notification bell, and what that will do is every time I upload a new video, you'll get a notification for that, as opposed to having to log on and check to see if I've uploaded a new video. So thanks a lot, guys, and I'll catch you soon in the next one. Cheers, guys.